June 6, 1944. Before sunrise, the largest amphibious invasion in history is about to begin. But it almost didn't happen. The weather over the English Channel was so bad, the Supreme Allied Commander, Dwight D. Eisenhower, had a note in his pocket taking full responsibility for a potential failure. He had postponed the invasion by 24 hours, a risky move that could have exposed the entire operation. But his chief meteorologist saw a tiny, fleeting window of calm weather. It was a massive gamble. With the fate of the world resting on his shoulders, Eisenhower gave the go-ahead. "Okay, let's go." Across the Channel, in occupied France, the German High Command was completely in the dark. Thanks to a brilliant Allied deception campaign called Operation Fortitude, Hitler was convinced the main invasion would land at Pas-de-Calais, the closest point to England. They'd created a phantom army, complete with inflatable tanks, fake radio chatter, and even a famous general, George S. Patton, placed in command of this ghost force. The deception was so effective that even as the real invasion force of over 5,000 ships steamed towards Normandy, the best German divisions were waiting for an attack that would never come. In the pre-dawn darkness, the first wave of heroes arrived not by sea, but from the sky. Over 13,000 American paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions, along with British airborne forces, dropped behind enemy lines. Their mission was chaos. They were to seize key bridges, disrupt communication lines, and secure vital crossroads to prevent German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. But the drop was a disaster for many. High winds and heavy anti-aircraft fire scattered the paratroopers far from their landing zones. Men found themselves alone, in swamps, or landing directly on top of German positions. One famous story is of Private John Steele of the 82nd Airborne, whose parachute snagged on the church steeple in Sainte-Mère-Église. He hung there for hours, pretending to be dead, as the battle raged below him. Despite the chaos, small groups of determined paratroopers rallied together, found their objectives, and started fighting, creating crucial diversions that would prove vital in the hours to come. As the sun began to rise, the horizon filled with ships. From the German bunkers along the Atlantic Wall, the view was terrifying. For the young soldiers in the landing craft, seasickness was rampant, and fear was a constant companion. The naval bombardment began. A deafening roar as thousands of shells from battleships and cruisers rained down on the German defenses. The goal was to pulverize the concrete bunkers and artillery emplacements. While it was terrifying, the Atlantic Wall, a 2,400-mile line of fortifications built by the Germans, was incredibly strong. Much of it survived the initial onslaught. Then, the ramps dropped. The 5 landing beaches, codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword, each had their own story of courage and sacrifice. At Utah Beach, the American forces had a stroke of luck. Strong currents pushed their landing craft about a mile south of their intended target onto a much less defended stretch of sand. They quickly established a beachhead with relatively few casualties, a huge early success. But just a few miles away at Omaha Beach, hell was unleashed. Omaha was a 4-mile crescent of sand, overlooked by high, steep bluffs. It was defended by a veteran German division that had recently been moved there, a fact Allied intelligence had missed. The pre-landing bombardment had completely missed the German fortifications on the bluffs. As the American soldiers of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions waded ashore, they ran into a storm of machine gun fire, mortars, and artillery. The first wave was decimated. Landing craft were sunk, and the beach became a brutal killing field, littered with obstacles and the bodies of the fallen. For hours, the men were pinned down at the water's edge, with nowhere to go. It seemed like the invasion at Omaha was on the verge of complete collapse. Amidst the carnage, leaders emerged. Officers and sergeants, seeing the chaos, began rallying the terrified, shell-shocked soldiers. Brigadier General Norman Cota famously moved along the beach under heavy fire, telling his men, "There are two kinds of people who are staying on this beach, those who are dead and those who are going to die. Now let's get the hell out of here." Small groups of soldiers inspired by this leadership began to crawl and fight their way forward. They used Bangalore torpedoes, long explosive charges, to blow gaps in the barbed wire and seawall. Slowly, painstakingly, they began climbing the bluffs, flanking the German machine gun nests one by one. It was a brutal, intimate fight. But by the end of the day, the Americans had clawed their way off the beach and secured a tenuous foothold. The cost was staggering, with over 2,400 American casualties, earning Omaha the grim name Bloody Omaha. Meanwhile, on the eastern beaches, British and Canadian forces were also fighting their way ashore. At Gold and Sword beaches, the British faced stiff resistance but managed to push inland, linking up with the airborne troops who had captured the critical Pegasus Bridge in a daring glider assault. At Juno Beach, the Canadians faced a heavily fortified coastline and a rough sea. The first wave suffered casualties comparable to Omaha, but they pressed on with incredible determination. Despite the initial losses, the Canadians pushed farther inland on D-Day than any other Allied force, a testament to their skill and bravery. By the end of June 6th, the Allies had landed over 156,000 troops in Normandy. They had not achieved all their objectives, and the beachheads were not yet fully secure, but they were ashore. The Atlantic Wall had been breached. The victory was far from certain. Ahead lay months of brutal fighting in the dense hedgerows of Normandy, a campaign that would be just as bloody as the landings themselves. But D-Day was the turning point. It was the beginning of the end for Hitler's regime in Western Europe. It was a monumental feat of planning, bravery, and sacrifice. The longest day was the culmination of years of effort, a day when thousands of ordinary young men from different nations came together and did something truly extraordinary. They faced down tyranny on the beaches of Normandy, and in doing so, they changed the course of history forever. Their courage ensured that the world we live in today is one of freedom, and their legacy must never be forgotten. Thank you so much for watching. The story of D-Day is filled with countless individual acts of heroism, far too many to cover in one video. If you found this story as moving as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most pivotal moments. Let me know in the comments what part of this incredible story stands out to you the most. We'll see you in the next one.